So a simple terminology or definition of faith is this: faith is the supernatural ability to take God at His word in spite of all the physical evidence. Or faith is acting like it's so when it doesn't seem so, until it becomes so because God said so. That is a great definition of faith. Well, good morning. So for 9 weeks, we have been talking about what God provided for us through the finished work of Christ. That Jesus came to heal, deliver, restore, and set us free. To set us free from all of the effects of sin and the power of Satan. So now we're going to finish up the series by talking about how God intended for us to receive this great gift. So today we're going to talk about faith to receive. So faith is the key to receiving all of God's promises. We have to understand God's kingdom is based on His provision and man's choice to receive. God's provision and man's choice to receive. Ephesians 2:8-9 tells us this: for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So faith is how we receive what has already been provided for by grace. So I want to start by giving us a biblical definition of faith. So according to Hebrews 11:1, this is the Amplified version. It says, now faith is the assurance, the title deed, or confirmation of things hoped for, divinely guaranteed, and the evidence of things not seen, the conviction of the reality. Faith comprehends as a fact what cannot be experienced by the physical senses. So a simple terminology or definition of faith is this: faith is the supernatural ability to take God at His word in spite of all the physical evidence. Or faith is acting like it's so when it doesn't seem so, until it becomes so because God said so. That is a great definition of faith. Now, the great concern with all of us is the question of, do we have faith? See, for me, I was not taught much about faith at all in my journey as a Christian. And even in my seminary experience, they did not teach me about faith. So when I looked at the promises that I saw in the Bible, and I looked at the disparity between what the word says and what I received, my only conclusion was that I did not have enough faith. See, maybe some of you feel the same way. But let me explain to you about faith. See, faith is received as a gift. So we have to understand something about God's word. See, God's word is a faith container. God's word is a faith container. So think about the little capsules you take when you have a sinus headache, and it contains those sinus medicines. God's words literally contain faith. They contain faith. So when you hear God's word, faith enters into your experience. That's how it works. Faith is received as a gift. So think about this. When you look at the verse we just looked at, Ephesians 2:8-9, for by grace you've been saved through faith. See, we think of salvation as the gift there, and that certainly is true. But see, that wasn't the only gift you received. See, when you heard about Jesus, and you heard the words concerning Jesus, faith rose up inside of you and gave you the ability to receive the promise. See, so when you heard the word of God, faith rose up inside of you, and suddenly you believed that there was an invisible being that created the heavens and the earth. And He had a Son that loved you so much that he came to restore a relationship with you, that he came to die on a cross so you could be set free from the power of sin and Satan. All of that came because you received it as a gift. So faith is a gift that was received when you were born again. So there's something else that's very important to understand, and that is what kind of faith did we receive? See, Romans 12:3 says this, "For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that it is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to, but to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith." The measure of faith. Now, you notice he didn't say a measure of faith. The means there's one measure. So think about it. If you were to go to a soup line and the person serving had a ladle, every person that came in, he would give them a ladleful of soup, or the ladleful of soup. So everyone would receive the same ladle of soup. Well, when you were born again, everyone received the same measure of faith. See, but the enemy wants us to believe that you got an eyedropper, right? And someone else got a quarter cup, and somebody else got a cup, and Billy Graham got a gallon. See, that's what the enemy wants us to believe. But see, everyone received enough faith to receive the greatest gift of all, which is called salvation. So that's not the only indication of this. So let's look at what the Apostle Peter says. In 2 Peter 2:1, Peter says, "Simon Peter, a bondservant and apostle, a special messenger, personally chosen representative of Jesus Christ, to those who have received and possess by God's will." Now listen to this, "a precious faith of the same kind as ours, by the righteousness of God and Savior, Lord Jesus Christ." So Peter, the apostle, tells us that we have the same measure of faith that he had. Peter says that we have the same measure of faith that we have. So faith is not the issue. What we have to do is understand the purpose of faith and how God intended for us to exercise our faith. So let's start by looking at the purpose of faith. See, faith is how we function in the invisible realm of God's kingdom. See, we've talked about this before. We live in two realms. There's a spiritual realm, and then there is the natural realm. And God equipped us to function in both realms, right? So he gave us a spirit, and our spirit is how we function in the spiritual or invisible or eternal realm, right? And what your spirit uses to function is faith. Now, you also have a soul and a body, and that's how you were designed to function in the material realm we call the earth, right? You have a soul, and that's your mind, will, and emotions, and that's how you function in the material part, or in the mental part of the material realm, right? Using logic and reason. And then you also have a body, and that's how you function in the physical part of the material realm, using your 5 natural senses. But see, it's our spirit that allows us to function in the spiritual realm, and it has to use this 6th sense called faith. So we have to understand now about this faith. See, Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 5:7, we walk by faith and not by sight. See, so faith is the ability to believe the unseen. Faith is the ability to believe the unseen. In 2 Corinthians 4:18, it says, "While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen, for the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal." right? So faith is how we see into the eternal realm of God's kingdom. Faith is how we see into the eternal realm of God's kingdom. But what we have to understand is there are two components to faith. There are two components to faith. The first component of faith is this: it's believing. Right? Faith is believing. You have to believe God's word first. Step one is to believe God's word. So belief is trusting God's word. But see, there's a second part of faith that we have to understand, and that is the choice to receive God's word. See, there has to be an action, right? Because the kingdom is based on God's provision and man's choice. So God gave us a free will, and he never overrides our free will. So if we want to receive something from him, we have to decide to receive it. So we will see this in Romans 10:10. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. See, faith, if it's only belief, you'll never receive the promise of God. See, step one in salvation is you have to believe that Jesus died on the cross to set you free from the power of sin and Satan. But here's the second part. You had to make the choice to receive it by faith. Do you understand? Just because you believe that God died does not mean that you're saved. You have to make a choice to follow him. You have to make a choice to receive him. And we have to understand that God's plans do not happen automatically, right? If they happened automatically, then everyone would be saved. But we know they're not, right? So you have to, step one, believe God's word, and then you have to act upon God's word by exercising your will. It's really important for us to understand that second component. So, how do we exercise our will? See, according to Jesus, we exercise our will by what we say and what we do. But it's also how we create belief. We create belief by what we say also. So listen to this in Mark 11:23. Now this is Jesus himself. And he starts off by saying, Mark 11:22 and 23, so Jesus answered and said to them, have faith in God. Now, if you look at this in the Greek, it just says, have faith of God. And what this is saying is, what Jesus is saying is, have God's kind of faith. Well, what was God's faith based on? The integrity of his word. Well, how did God release his faith? Through his words. So Jesus is telling us how God intended for us to release our faith right here in this verse. And so in verse 23 he says, for assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. See, so what you say creates belief, but it also releases your faith to receive. There's two components to that. So listen to this in Matthew 17:20. Jesus says this. This is after the disciples were not able to cast out the demon. In Matthew 17. So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you had faith as a mustard seed, you would say to the mountain, move from here to there, and it would move, and nothing would be impossible for you. So Jesus is saying, if you had faith of a mustard seed, and you do, because everyone received it as a gift, the way you would release it is you would say to the mountain. Do you understand what he's saying? Faith is released by what you say. Now, Paul confirms this in 2 Corinthians 4:13. And since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what is written, I believed, and therefore I spoke. We also believe and therefore speak. So now let's look at a biblical example of this, right? Let's look at the story of Mary receiving one of the most miraculous promises of God, right? So the angel comes to Mary and says this: the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore also, that Holy One who is to be born will be called the Son of God. Now indeed, Elizabeth, your relative, has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her who was called barren. For with God nothing will be impossible. Then Mary said, Behold, the maidservant of the Lord, let it be unto me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. You see, so God had made a provision for her to be the mother of Jesus, right? And he comes to her with this promise. He sends an angel to tell her she's going to give birth to a son named Jesus. But how did she receive it? Was it automatic? No, she had to receive. So what did she say? Let it be to me according to your word. Right? So Mary believed the promise because she got a word from God. But she received the promise because she declared what she believed through her faith-filled words. Right? So belief is taking God at his word. Faith is acting upon the word. It requires both. Now, here's what I want us to think about. Is what happened to Mary the exception or the norm? Right? She believed because she had this incredible divine encounter. Is that normal for us? I mean, think about this. If you were laying in bed tonight, and in the middle of the night, suddenly, you see this bright light, your whole bedroom just turns bright as the sun, and you look up, and there's Jesus, the incarnate one in the flesh with his glorified body, and he points at you and says, by my stripes you were healed. Would you believe what he said? Absolutely, you would believe what he said because of this divine encounter, and you would have no problem receiving it by faith because of your belief. But here's what I want you to understand. That is the exception and not the norm. Most of us don't have a divine encounter that allows us to believe or take God at his word. So how did God intend for us to do it? Because he gave us these promises for a reason. So let me explain to you how he intended for us to receive them. The normal part. See, belief is an issue of the heart. And the way God designed for us to create a system of belief is to meditate and declare God's word until belief gets established in our heart. That's step one. You have to have belief in your heart about the promises of God before you can have faith to receive them. Right? So he talks about this multiple times. I'm just going to read one. So this is Joshua 1:8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your ways prosperous, and then you will have good success. So meditation is how God intended for us to create belief in our hearts. But we have to understand something really important about meditation. I did not catch this for years. Part of meditation is to declare God's word. It's to declare, it's you saying out loud what God's word says. It's meditating on it. So if you look up the word meditation in the Hebrew from the Old Testament, it means to mutter or speak quietly. In the Greek, it means to murmur, by implication to ponder, imagine, meditate, mourn, mutter, speak, study, talk, and utter. See, so through this process of meditation, we can develop a system of belief where we can believe God and then we can take him at his word by exercising our faith. That's the important part. you can't exercise your faith until you believe, until you become fully persuaded of the promise. So let me show this to you in the life of Abraham. This is a really clear illustration of how this works. So we all know the story of Abraham. When he was 75 years old, in Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3, God shows up and has this conversation with Abraham. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you all of the families of the earth shall be blessed." Right? So he gets this promise that the great nation is going to come from him. Right? And this happens at the age of 75. But here's the part I want you to think about. Did this happen automatically? Or did Abraham have a part to play? Did he have to believe and receive, like Jesus says, or does it come automatically like some people teach? That all God's promises just happen automatically. That's not how it works. See, it did not happen automatically. He gave him this promise, but it did not happen right away. So now listen to this. Years later, God shows back up. There's still no child. This is Genesis 15, 1 through 4. And he says this, "After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward.'" Right? So he's confirming that he's the God who gave him the promise. But listen to what Abraham says. He's telling us what he believes. "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside, and he said, "Look now toward heaven, and count the stars if you were able to number them." And he said to them, "So shall your descendants be." So God gave him this promise to have a child with his wife who's barren, but Abraham still sees himself fatherless. He doesn't believe it because he still sees himself fatherless. Did you get that? Then the Lord God, "I will give you, the Lord, what will you give me, seeing I go childless?" So he sees himself as childless, which means he's not believing God's word. So what is God's answer to this? How does God bring a solution so he can receive the promise? Well, he says, "Behold, the word of the Lord came to him." What does behold mean? Behold means see what I promised. So what he does is he takes Abraham outside and he shows him the stars. And he says, "Every one of these stars will be from your generation." But he also takes him outside during the day and he tells him to look at the sand. So what is he saying for him to do when he points to the stars and the sand? He's talking about meditating on the promise, right? Stars by night, sand by day. If Abraham will begin to meditate on this promise, he will begin to develop belief. And once he develops belief, then he could exercise his faith and he'll receive the promise. So he gives him this ability to meditate on something so that faith can rise up, belief can rise up in his heart. But then again, here it is years later. Now it's Genesis 16. Now listen to what Sarah says. Sarah and Abraham literally declare their unbelief. So it says 16, 1 through 2. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing a child. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abraham heeded the voice of Sarah. So Sarah's words were in conflict with God's promise. Her words were in conflict with God's promise. Excuse me. She literally said, "The Lord has restrained me from bearing a child," when God had already promised her she'd have one. But it was because of what she believed. It was because of what she saw. She still saw herself as childless. See, this is how you know that they were in unbelief. Right? If Sarah believed that she was going to bear a child, would she have asked Abram to sleep with Hagar? No way. If Abram believed that Sarah was going to get pregnant, would he have slept with Hagar? No way. See, they still don't believe. They still don't believe. So how does God bring this to pass? He has a promise, but he's got to get Abraham to believe what he's saying before he can receive it. So now we'll see this in Genesis 17:5. When Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly." Then Abraham fell on his face, and God talked to him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations." So now God comes over to Abraham and he changes his name to Father of Many Nations. Now think about this. So now Abraham, as far as we know that he had 318 fighting men, right? But he also had servants, he had shepherds, and they all had families. It's potentially that Abraham had 600 people that were working with and for him. So now he has a name change. So now he is to go reintroduce himself to every one of those people. And he says, "Look, the Lord changed my name to Abraham, which means father of many nations. So no longer will you call me Abram. My name is Abraham." Right? So now he goes and he has to reintroduce himself, Abraham. And every time he says that, what is he saying? Father of nations, Father of nations, Father of nations, Father of nations. Now, you have 600 people that are following your instructions. How many times do you think they came to Abraham to get instructions? And how many times did they address him by name? A lot. So now, every time he hears Abraham, 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 every time he hears that, belief starts to rise up inside of him, and he begins to see himself as the father of many nations. He begins to see himself because he begins to declare what God's word says. Isn't that a picture of meditation? He began to declare what God's word said, and then boom, he was able to receive the promise. Now listen to this in Romans 4:17. It says, "As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations, before God whom he believed, and who raises the dead and calls those things that do not exist as though they did." Isn't that what he did? He taught Abraham to call those things that be not as though they were, right? He called himself a father. He called himself a father when he wasn't a father until he believed it could be so. And then in verse 18 it says, against all hope, he believed in hope so that he might become the father of many nations, according to what was spoken. So shall your descendants be. And not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body dead when he was about 100 years old, not yet the deadness of Sarah's womb. Now listen, he did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strong in faith, giving glory to God, and being fully persuaded that what God had promised, he was able to perform, and it was credited to him for righteousness. So once Abraham and Sarah believed in their heart that they were the father and mother of many nations, when they came together, now they were able to conceive. Right? So they had to believe they were the father of many nations, but they had to exercise their faith by coming together and creating conception. Right? So they had to believe God's word, and then they had to act upon God's word. And by belief and faith, the promise of Abraham was fulfilled. That's a good word right there. So faith is acting like it's so when it doesn't seem so, until it becomes so, because God says so. So what I want us to do, I want us to just take a few minutes to think about how the enemy tries to keep us from receiving from him. How he keeps us from receiving from him. Because we have to, first of all, believe God's word. Right? So what does he do? He tries to change God's word. He's constantly attacking God's word, but we have to believe God's word. But then we have to receive God's word, and then we have to stand. See, one of the biggest challenges is this. When you receive God's word, you're standing on something that you don't see. Right? In Mark 11:23, Jesus said you had to believe and receive, and then you would have it. Right? So the receive part, that's the action word. Right? It means to take hold, to apprehend. These are all these verbs that talk about how you receive from God based on what you believe. But then you have to stand, because the promise does not happen immediately most of the time. So it says you have to believe, and then you'll receive. So how long does that take? Nobody knows. But you have to believe. Once you declare the promise, you have to believe you received it at that moment, and then you have to stand in your faith. That's the fight of faith. That's where the battle is won, right there. So how does the enemy try to get us to lose our gift, to lose the promise? He gets us to waver, right? The same thing he did with Abraham. He tried to get him to waver, right? So the word waver means to be undecided between two opinions or two courses of action. It means to be irresolute, right? To have faith means to be resolute in God's promises. Right? So the reason Abraham was ever able to receive is because he remained irresolute. He believed that God was able to fulfill the promise. He took God at his word. But the battle was this. He still had a 99-year-old body. And he still had a wife that was 90 that could not bear a child when she was 20. See, and the enemy wants us to focus on the natural. Right? He wants you to see, well, this isn't possible. I mean, come on, look at your body, Abraham. You think you're going to have a child? Look at her body. You think she's going to have a child? Right? So he wants us to be focused on the natural realm and not the promise of God. And that's the same thing that happens to us. We believe something, but then the enemy starts to say, but what about this? What about that? You haven't seen it yet. How can you say it's going to happen? Right? So he tries to get us to use our natural senses to get us to waver and not take God at his word. But listen what the Bible says about wavering. And the enemy knows this. So James 1:6 says this. He's talking about receiving from God. But let him ask in faith without wavering. For he who wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed with the wind. Let no man think that he will receive anything from the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. See, so in order to receive from God, we have to create a system of belief where we take God at his word, and then we have to act upon his word. Right? We have to hear what he says, and we have to declare what he says, and we have to act upon what he says, and that's how you receive it. And then once you receive it, you have to stand until it's manifested. What you receive is in the spiritual realm first. And you have to stay in that place of faith until you receive it. And then you have to believe God's word in spite of everything around. So let me just give you just a short illustration of this. Remember Peter sees Jesus walking on the water during a storm? And he says, "If that's you, Lord, call me out to you." I'm paraphrasing. And Jesus says, "Come." See, so Peter is exercising his faith, right? He believes that he could walk on the water because he believes Jesus. And he exercises his faith by what? Stepping out on the boat. So he steps out onto the water, right? He believes God's word because Jesus said, "Come." Right? So he believed God's word, and then he exercised his faith by stepping onto the water. And he literally walked on the water for a moment. But then what happened? The waves and the wind, right? So all he had to do is keep his eyes on Jesus, and he would have walked all the way to him, right? But what happens? The natural senses, right? The enemy says, "But what about these storms?" Right? You can't walk in the water with this wind. Feel that wind against your skin. Look at those waves. Feel those waves on your leg. You can't do it. You can't do it. And what happened with Peter, like so many of us, he began to believe more about the circumstances than he did about the promise. Right? He believed more about the circumstances than he believed the promise. So in closing, we need to learn to take God at his word, and we need to exercise our faith according to his word, and then we need to learn to stand until we receive.